I go into homes or different places or even restaurants, and there's like 19 televisions going on all at once. There's radios on, everyone's talking, every single person's on their phone in a restaurant. It's like, when did we just stop talking to each other? When did we stop thinking quiet wasn't good? Like, what's wrong with quiet? Quiet is when we can actually hear ourselves and kind of know what's going on, right? Allowing time just to be, and not always be in a rush and have a full schedule.
Enjoy this Wild Soul Gathering production. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie. Pour yourself a really tall glass of spiritual curiosity and join me for the Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious podcast. In the spirit of happy hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Welcome, Wild Souls. Get ready to embark on a fascinating journey with the incredible Dr. Sharnael Wolverton-Sehon. She is a visionary leader in energy medicine, author, and spiritual teacher who seamlessly blends science, spirituality, and health. With her unique perspective rooted in quantum science and metaphysical insights, she empowers individuals to align with their highest frequency and live with purpose. Whether it's through decoding the Bible in a metaphysical light or harnessing the power of essential oils, Dr. Sharnael's work invites us all to explore the limitless possibilities of healing and transformation. Settle in for some magic. This conversation is going to inspire, uplift, and leave you craving more. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Well, hello. So happy to be with you today.
Thanks. So if you don't mind, let's just jump right into your work. Can I ask you, what inspired your deep connection with energy medicine and how has that evolved over time?
That's a great question. I have always considered myself spiritual. I've had different encounters over my life, and I did not actually grow up in a religious type setting at all. But when over time, I was just introduced to different things, and I guess the thing that was really got me curious was just miracles and the supernatural, the paranormal, ESP, intuition. And when I started realizing that was frequency based and energy based, then it was kind of just like, wow, I mean, this is all connected. I've always been really curious on, why are we not doing the things that are like in the ancient texts, that Jesus did, or, whoever did, these great teachers, that mystics, that did these cool things. And it's like, well, when did that stop, or did it, and like, why is it that some people can do it and some people can't? And so I kind of just started down this trail of really honing in on, is it about diet? Is it about meditation? Is it, what is it? What's the formula to get there? And I'm still on that journey pretty much of just, remembering that aspect of who we are in our technology. But I have a lot more tools now than I did when I started. But yeah.
And I'm going to guess that they're going to be ever expanding. It's interesting your reference and how that your curiosities, because I feel like many of those are coming to the forefront for a greater number of people than they have in the past. They've poked at some of us early on, so we're going to be here, I think, to support in that journey. So just to touch a little bit more on that, what's your perspective on the intersection of science and spirituality in today's world? I know that that's sort of what got you to the crossroads. Do you have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually just got off of an interview with a lady in Belgium who is working with doctors and, wow, that was loud. Sorry.
That's okay.
With doctors and medical clinicians doing Reiki. And I'm seeing it more and more where that connection is more, I guess, acceptable. and I don't necessarily see Reiki as spiritual, and I don't necessarily see science as science. I don't know. It. I don't think there is any separation, in my opinion.
I, I agree. I come from a healthcare background, and I am a Reiki master. I do energy healing, and when you get into the science and the mathematics of a lot of the things that we're growing into now, I feel like the energy work and the frequencies is just a more advanced version of that. But even when you go back to the miracles, we'll say, of the Bible, I don't profess to be real knowledgeable Bible type of person, but the ability to be able to heal and heal with our hands and use that energy and frequency, I think has always been there. We just forgot, as you said, or we didn't believe, and we're coming back into our power a little bit more. And having worked in healthcare, I will tell you that from a Reiki perspective, that has been introduced more into the acute care setting and seems a little bit more acceptable, although
Really?
not fully embraced. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're electronic. I mean, we are, and we're also magnetic. And so when we're dealing with actual technology, meaning physical technology, whether it's MRIs or X-rays or lasers, that
Mhm.
has an effect on us. But why wouldn't it be any different with our own technology to lay hands on someone and to charge that battery in some way? I look at it even with the charge of the earth. If we are in the house all the time, never taking off our shoes and going outside and connecting to the energies of the earth, then we're not charging either. And we're just being, in these like prison houses with no aromatherapy, no trees, no sunlight. We weren't meant to be in houses necessarily. And so even the charge and the technology of nature that's available to us when and if we choose to use it and utilize it, then there's a lot of health benefits as well. Some of the ancient people, natives that I've studied, when someone was sick, they would literally just dig a hole and put them in, the ground and bury them to the neck up and let the earth like heal the person.
Wow.
And there's a lot to a lot of the things that we do and don't do that we could tap into. But yeah, you're right. It's an ongoing, expanding journey of just continuously looking for that and seeing that. And then also, I think people are more and more open, like you said. I think people are kind of over the pharmaceuticals and the side effects and not trusting doctors, which they shouldn't, to be honest. I mean, not because I think they're bad, but I don't know how much education they're even getting in some of these modalities and or just natural things.
Well, medicine is based in, from my perspective, sick people. So if you don't keep people in some degree ill, you're out of a job. The whole having a well population and wellness doesn't usually stem well with the pharmaceutical companies and those bigger companies. And honestly, physicians, I think, are just such a little part of the big machine anymore with the influences of it. But that's how they've been taught, is they're coming from an illness-based model, not a wellness-based model. So I'll share with you, I know that you just shared with me that you're in Louisiana and got hit with this unexpected snow that's not in your real world. And I'm up here in Ohio where it's the season and that's what we're used to. And we're in single digits, below zero and the teens. And I have to tell you, I think it's really important, the being outside of the house. And you make a really good point with that, because we really have gravitated more and more to that. And I'll tell you that I was outside actually last night barefoot in my single digit weather, and it was invigorating. Now, mind you, I didn't stay out too long. I know better than that, but There's something about the cold and being out in it and being in the nature. I'm on a farm, so I'm surrounded by nature. And it was just an incredible reset with all that had happened during the week. So thank you for sharing that. And I encourage you to go out and play in the snow a little bit.
Yes, I'm thinking about it. I know it's just a little bit. I'm from Montana. I should know
Oh,
better.
so you know cold.
It's just been a minute since I mean,
Yeah.
maybe 3 times I've seen it snow in Louisiana. But going back to the
Okay.
training with the doctors and what have you too, the other aspect is just the programming and just being completely bombarded with these pharmaceutical commercials.
Yep.
I mean, us in New Zealand are the only countries in the world that even allow pharmaceutical commercials. And so I think that people,
Interesting.
um, they're so literally programmed and brainwashed to think they need this drug or that drug that they don't ever look for options necessarily. But I think there are a handful of people, especially in these last 3, 4 years, that have gone through, all the stuff that we went through, that they're not trusting as much, and they're sort of turned off by the whole thing, and they're realizing, maybe people aren't telling them the truth. And again, I don't think everybody's bad. I just think that
And
either
I
they don't
agree.
know about it or they've not been introduced to it, and um, it may be new to them.
Yeah, that's part of the shift, and there's a lot out there. So, how do you use biofeedback and quantum science in your healing practices?
Yeah, so I love biofeedback because it's remote.
Mm-hmm.
It can be remote. We could do it in person too, but excuse me. Basically, what we do is we do evox, which is a voice, a recording of the patient, and then we also do an actual photo of the biofield. And what we can do is use those two um, different tactics to kind of look and see what's going on diagnostically. It does give us about 30 different reports. We look at hormones, sleep patterns, we look at organs, maybe there's some deficiencies, some sensitivities to foods and or environmental issues. We can look at even the electronics and how the body may be responding to like Wi-Fi or cell phone or towers or appliances. And some people are more sensitive than others. We can look at the skeletal. We look at emotions, which, I run across quite a few people with conversion disorders. You know, 86% of all physical issues really truly are emotional. So if we can clear those emotions, the physical issues seem to dissipate and just the signals quit because there's nothing to talk about, literally. But once we get the diagnostics, the software will customize frequencies to counter anything that may be low or high and kind of bring that harmony back. And then we send it to the person long distance to receive the frequencies. And usually it'll last anywhere from 7 to 10 days. Sometimes it'll go up to 14 days, depending on the situation. Everybody's different. Diet, mindset, absorption capacity, those kind of things. But once we finish one scan, it is a good idea to get maybe a second or a third and piggyback right on the edge of when the last frequencies kind of ended. So we don't have to start at ground zero, but we can sort of just kind of take up where we left off and keep that entrainment, because the goal would be to get the body into a new frequency, harmonized frequency and higher vibe frequency, and that to be the new norm.
Yeah.
So, if you kind of hit and then you stop and you go and you stop, there might not be enough entrainment to kind of keep the body into that remembrance. And in some places it will be a remembrance of what they were. In some places it's going to be a brand new frequency that they've never even been at. And either way, the shifts are a lot of them are very tangible for people to feel. Some people feel nothing, but some people literally will cry, or for me, the first time and the second time that happened, it literally just knocked me out. I just got super, super tired. I slept for hours and hours sitting up, like in the middle of my living room, in the middle of the day. I was just knocked out. We do most of our scans at night in case that happens, but some people it has the total opposite. The third time that I had it done, I had so much energy. I was cleaning cabinets and garage and, cleaning out my closets and doing all this stuff that I hadn't done in a while and just caught up with it. But some people cry. Some people, will have an emotional detox or get agitated. I always tell people put a journal next to your bed before you go to bed the night of the scan and those weeks of the scan, just because a lot of people get inspiration and ideas for their business, for their relationships. I've had people who wrote books out of this, who got
Yeah.
music ideas, because when you're clearing stagnant energy and you're increasing the vibration of the body, you get more in tune to hearing that GPS, the God positioning system in here, and, or just things can come through, and just filter through. And you're just like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Like, oh, where did that come from? And we've actually had people who got money back. Like there might have been a stuck pattern somewhere with the clog of those energies that maybe someone owed them money and all of a sudden the money came through or the job came through or the boyfriend showed up or the estranged daughter came back or
Right.
so there's a lot of things that happen with this. It's not just physical health, but it's kind of cool to see how this works.
Yeah. So it's like you're opening the highways and byways. What do you see as the most misunderstood concept about the energy healing?
I think a lot of people think it's just like woo woo. And I can say that because I was one of those people. I'm very left brained. I'm right brained too, but I'm very diagnostic. I'm very textbook data, sciencey. So when one of the doctors found this software, he was like, let me, use you as a guinea pig. I'm just going to try it. I was like, right. Cause he's like in another state away. And I'm like, I'm going to, this is going to work long distance. But when I was sleeping in my living room at 2 p.m. and just could barely keep my eyes open, I was like, oh my gosh, like something's happening. And I didn't even put together necessarily that was what was going on. I just remember looking at my husband and I was like, I think he might be doing it. And then when I woke up, I texted him right away and I was like, hey, did you just, and he had 5 minutes before 2 had said, hey, I'm about to start. So that happened. And then what's really crazy is my left brain was still like, how does this happen? How does, this isn't possible. Like I wanted to talk myself out of it.
Yeah.
But I was driving my Jeep going down the road and the satellite dish went off on the radio. And so put up an 800 number and it was like, call this number, blah, blah, blah. So I call the number. Some guy in India answers the phone. He's just like, yeah, we can help you. And he's like, pull over, turn off the radio, do this, blah, blah, blah. We're going to send a signal, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, 5 minutes later, I turn it back on. He zapped me from India. And like my car started and my radio came back on. About 3 hours later, I go home and my direct TV went out. Call the 800 number that shows up on the thing saying there's a problem, blah, blah, blah. They did the same thing. They beamed some signal. They said, turn it off, turn it on, blah, blah. Now we're going to beam this to you. And it was somewhere else. And here it was all the way in my living room working. So for me, it took me that. But then I was like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing. We're just sending like a signal to a body, like it's a tuning fork or something, it's really kind of cool.
Right. Right. It's interesting because we're more willing to accept all these radio waves with our different music programs, TVs, those kinds of things. But the idea that that also translates into ourselves, who are energetic beings, I think sometimes is hard. So I agree with you. It's the woo-woo. How do you think individuals can begin to recognize when they do have energetic imbalances within themselves?
Well, I mean, symptoms usually, if you're feeling tired or if you can't lose weight, if you're not sleeping well, any kind of symptoms can show up as signals that something's out of whack and not quite, in harmony. Usually people will end up going to a doctor and the doctor wants to say, oh, let me give you a pill for that. And we'll just turn off the pain and turn off
Right.
whatever. But, and with what we do, we're wanting to get to the root issue. We don't want to know like how to turn it off. We want to know why it started in the first place and how to turn it off from the beginning. Because when we ignore it, it just gets bigger and bigger. And if you get on one pharmaceutical, a lot of times the side effects will make you need to get on another and another and another. Next thing you know, you're taking 10 different things. I have people who come see me all the time, patients, and I'll make them fill out their paperwork and, just to see where they're at. They'll be on 10 or 15 different
Yeah.
things at a time. And I'll say, okay, so what are you taking this for? I don't know. What are you taking this for? I don't know. What are you taking this for? I don't know. And I'm like, they don't even know why they're doing it. They've maybe 10 years on 6 or 7 different pharmaceuticals. They really don't even know why they're on it. And it's not even helping, or they wouldn't be seeing me in the first place. And so I try to get people off of, slowly look to see why you're on these things and kind of pinpoint like how we can help them from the root.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Many, many years ago, I remember when they started expanding hospice services out of the oncology into more the heart failure, that kind of thing. And back then, when folks would get into hospice services, they would stop all their meds. And it was amazing. Many heart failure patients got better without taking the meds and did well. I always have that tucked in the back of my mind, um, which is right down with what you're saying. I think that there's a bazillion examples of what you just said in the healthcare environment for sure. Can you explain how spiritual alignment impacts daily life and decision making?
How, I'm sorry, spiritual.
How being spiritually aligned, spiritual alignment can impact your daily life and decision making.
Yeah. I think if we're more in tune and in practice with listening and also following that inner voice that we have, the more we trust it and the more we can take those chances or choices to do more and do better. Um, I think, for me, it's taken practice to trust that and to kind of pay attention. And I think after you don't pay attention a few times and then something bad happens, or you're like, why didn't I listen to myself? Why didn't I just go with my gut? The gut is truly your second brain, and you get a lot of feelings, and kind of, if you're feely, you kind of feel away and pay attention to the awareness of not just what's going on up here, but even down here. It's like, I don't know if you've ever been around someone and you kind of just feel like a fear or like an uncomfort, and you're just like, yeah, I'm not sure about that person. I would trust that. I would trust that because, time after time, better. We all know better. And they even say, like, I've studied stuff with like the FBI and what have you. A lot of people who have been abused or hurt, they all say, well, we felt fear and we felt this and that, but we just did it anyway because we thought, we needed to open the door for the guy, or, give the guy a ride home, or all the, different things that we just were trying to be nice. And we don't pay
Right.
attention to those things, those signals that are really there to help you. Fear can be very bad, but it can also be good. It can be a thing to help us to watch out, to have wisdom.
So you're touching on intuition, and I think you bring up a great point because of our programming, whether it be societal, cultural, what we learn at home, we're programmed to do different niceties, which many times overrides our intuition and that feeling. So, with that being said, What role do you think intuition plays in your work, and how can people strengthen that intuitive ability?
Yeah, I it's funny that you asked that. I feel like I use my intuition in everything, and I don't know if everybody does, and maybe they do and they're just not aware of it. But when I see my patients, a lot of times I'll get a dream beforehand, or I'll just get this gut feeling and I'll just follow it, and then it'll be right. And I'll be like, you know what? Let's look into parasites. I have a feeling this might be a parasite issue, and some of it probably is just experience of seeing things differently over and over. But sometimes it's completely out of this world. Like literally, it's just like, where did that come from? And, I pay attention to those little inklings. And I taught classes on hearing God's voice or hearing intuition. And I had, a spiritual journey of being, speaking at conferences on dreams and visions and that kind of thing before I was in the medical field, believe it or not. So I kind of already was in that world too. And it was an easy transition. But even in business, or if you're a teacher or a mom or anything, intuition comes into play for every aspect of your life if and when you use it. And I think it's just about paying attention, practicing, and then also trusting whether it's good or bad as far as like, do you make this decision or do you make a different one, and following those leads.
Yeah, I think trust is a big component in growing with embracing your intuition. You talk about sovereignty and health and spirituality. How do you define this concept?
For me, sovereignty has a lot to do with like building and creating your own world, and just being almost, I don't want to say untouchable, but making sure the ego is in check so much that there aren't any flare ups as far as like taking things personal, or, having a complete breakdown over something that's really not even a big deal. Like, even for example, me being very left brained and being pretty structured on some things, I have very much learned to just, when things don't go, quote, my way, to realize, you know what, this is for me in some way. I don't see it yet, and maybe I never will, but I'm just going to go with it, and being a little bit more easy about the way things flow instead of just making sure the plan is perfect and everything goes and every T is dotted, and, every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and, just being a little more relaxed. I think that helps a bit with sovereignty because we're not just like breaking down from the inside out, but also just not letting those outside forces dominate or administrate how we feel or what we're going to do. You mentioned earlier about doing niceties and, doing things because we think it's the right thing to do. Sometimes when you follow your intuition, it isn't necessarily the right thing to do for someone else, but it's the right thing to do for us. And that can be looked at as, oh, you're being selfish or you're not helping, or, you fill in the blank. But self-care is like a really important thing. The oxygen mask has to come on first. And I am definitely not a proponent of cancel culture. I'm not excited about the estrangement culture that's happening right now. Right now, it used to be 1 out of 500 people were estranged from some family member. Now it's 1 in 4, because there is
Wow.
so much like, I think people are using the self-care a little bit too far, and they're like, oh, I can't be around that person because self-care, and it's almost celebrated that you canceled, your mom or your dad or your sister or your brother or your uncle or your aunt, or all these divisions. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying you have to do this for your sovereignty. The way I grew up is, if my sister and I had an issue, my parents would sit us down in the living room and we would talk it out until there was some sort of resolve, or at least an agree to disagree. But you can do all that and learn how to communicate and how to talk to one another and how to be a human with other people. And I think that when we do the canceling, it leaves out that whole learning how to communicate, learning how to resolve problems, learning how to work through things instead of just, running away from it and being like, oh, I got to do self-care. But all of those things are self-care, and all of those things have sovereignty aspects to it, because when we are in our bubble of humility, love, truth, living true, embodying living true, then we do have that protection within the field that both radiates out and also magnetizes back to us. And so staying clear and living true is the biggest way, I think, in my opinion, to have that sovereignty.
Nicely said. To build on that a little bit, what advice would you give to someone struggling to trust their spiritual instinct?
Baby steps. Yeah. I wouldn't, just jump in $1 million business deal, first time just on a whim, but I think it takes practice of, hey, make that phone call to so-and-so. And then you call and they're like, oh, I was just thinking about you. And it's just like, okay, it's a good thing I called, or you get a gift for someone, or you bring it over and they're like, oh my gosh, I was having a really bad day and you brought me flowers and that's so cool. Just following those little tiny things. Make a right turn here instead of a left turn. Then you find out there was a wreck that way. And you're like, oh, I'm glad I listened to myself. The more we practice listening and really getting quiet, I think that's an art that is kind of lost. Is we stay, I go into homes or different places or even restaurants, and there's like 19 televisions going on all at once. There's radios on, everyone's talking, every single person's on their phone in a restaurant. It's like, when did we just stop talking to each other? When did we stop thinking quiet wasn't good? Like, what's wrong with quiet? Quiet is when we can actually hear ourselves and kind of know what's going on, right? So I think those are some important things. It's just practicing getting quiet, allowing time just to be, and not always be in a rush and have a full schedule and be around a ton of people. I think that's part of it. But I'm curious what you think. What do you do?
Well, I'm going to go with you. A lot of it is removing myself, especially from media, television. I can't tell you the last time I watched television. Trying to limit myself on the computer and social media. A lot of what I'm doing with this podcast and stuff brings me into those formats, but not going down, we'll say, a lot of rabbit holes. But you can make space for yourself while you're making space for other people in your life also. And communicating, listening, as well as being willing to be authentic with your feelings when you're sharing, take a chance. I think those are all critical elements of moving forward with that.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah, media has its own frequency for sure.
It's interesting how frequency is, it always has been, but it's much more recognized now as the core to everything. It's creation in itself almost.
Yeah, it is. It's literally in nature. And even going back to like scripture, or, then there was light, that is frequency. There's a text that says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities, blah, blah, blah. That word wrestle actually means we vibrate. And, yeah, so we're vibrating with someone or against someone, depending on what their vibe is and our vibe is. And that's why birds of a feather flock together. We tend to attract our tribe, whether that's in the positive or the negative. We can also, have those lower frequencies that bring in entities and other things that aren't so great for us. And yeah, there's those aspects too. But those can be cleared as well. And I noticed that when I'm working with people who like smoke weed or drink alcohol or do anything, to kind of dumb down all the noise and the pain and what have you, it'll show up on one of the reports with the biofeedback, and that there's
Really?
psychic attack, entities. I mean, that page is usually really lit up because alcohol and any kind of substance abuse is lower vibration, literally. And so entities are at a 25, and those things are at a 25. And so we're 67 megahertz on a healthy adult day. But when you start dropping, then you're literally opening up the field for entrance of these things to come bring havoc and cause issues.
Wow, that's fascinating. So you mentioned the Bible and the text. How have sacred texts like the Bible influenced your spiritual approach to your work or to life in general?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't grow up in a religious home by any means. I was given a Bible at 13 when I moved to Louisiana, and I kind of went down that path for quite a while of just really studying everything. I was pretty obsessed with it, actually. Went to Bible school, went to seminary, like literally went all the way to the end of, the end, the end of the end of learning and just understanding. My takeaway from all of that was there is really good things about some of that. I'm not a big fan of religion at all, or division. And I don't agree with some of the tactics within those communities. But there's also some really beautiful people within those communities, and there's some really loving, kind people. I guess I'm more of on a spiritual journey than a religious journey for myself. And how does it impact my world? So the thing I was drawn to most about all of that was the miracles and the supernatural and the things that people were doing that I had not seen happen yet. And I'm seeing more and more of that. I'm experiencing it myself. And yeah, it's not just a part of my work, it's part of my whole life. Like, I love spirit, I love meditation, I love prayer, I love, it's life to me. It's a spiritual life that I love and enjoy. And yeah.
So I'm going to maybe reframe this a little bit more, just because this is a fascinating piece of the conversation for me. So you interpret the biblical teachings through more of a metaphysical lens.
Yes.
Right? So how do you bridge that with the traditional interpretations to trust? Like, what does that look like?
Well, what do you mean exactly?
So are you actually bridging them with traditional interpretations, or you're just looking through them from a metaphysical lens?
I'm a word person, so I usually end up looking at the origin of words. Etymology is like a biggie thing for me. And we know that the books have been translated and translated and translated and translated and translated. So who knows what's got lost and what hasn't. But when I look at some of the core words, I mean, you could say one thing and then you look at what the real text is and it means something completely different to me.
Correct, because it was in Arabic and we're interpreting a word in English or something like that. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, well, like one example is guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life. I always interpreted that, or was taught to interpret that as be on guard, be careful, be in defense, be aware. Someone might get me at any at any time. But from a quantum physics aspect, guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life. This is the biggest magnet of all of our body. And if we're not guarding our heart, meaning if we're thinking about really negative things and we're sad about it or we're angry about it, we're going to collect and magnetize more bad things to us, whether it's negative or angry or sad or whatever. So I look at it as a quantum physics thing where it's like, we should guard our heart because we're electronic and we're science and we're frequency and, that kind of thing. So I don't know about bridging. I guess I'm still in the process of figuring it out, really. And I don't honestly read the Bible very much. But when something comes across, I'll usually go like, I wonder what that really means. And then I'll just go dig around and then I'll go, oh, well, this is what I remember they taught me, but this is what it actually means. And sort of.
Okay. That makes sense. You just don't look at it from a surface perspective. You're taking a little bit of a deeper dive in it to get a clearer understanding of that message as it came across and in the context that it came across.
Yeah, there's a lot more frequency in the Bible than we ever thought, too. Just like the wrestling not against flesh and blood. It's like, oh, we're vibrating, and there's light and there's just, I think even, Jesus laying hands or the disciples that's Reiki. Duh.
Exactly.
But some people in those organizations will be like, oh, Reiki's the devil. They actually mention essential oils in the Bible all over that the disciples walked. They couldn't take a purse. They couldn't take, whatever, but they went 2 by 2 and they had their essential oils with them. And it's like, Luke in the Bible, he was a doctor, but he wasn't writing scripts, so what was he doing? He was using herbs and oils and different things. So, and those aspects, I can look at that and go, okay, they did that. I'm doing that. That's kind of cool, and bridge those kind of things, but
exactly,
but not all the other stuff, some of the other, weird stuff. But I do think it's cool. Like Moses could part the water. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we raising people from the dead? Like, I want to do that,
Well, you have time.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely a lot more. Dr. Sharnael, if one of the listeners wanted to connect with you, what would that look like and how did they connect?
Yes, you can easily go to drsharnael.com. It's DrSharnael, drsharnael.com. I have my services there. My books are there. I have online classes and courses there. If you are interested in getting a biofeedback session, we can do that remote. I also do soul audits. Podcast is on there too. We have a live show every Thursday at noon. A matter of fact, in a few minutes. But yeah, I'd love to connect with you guys and see if there's anything that I could do to help. A lot of the courses that I have are for teaching on energy, like mapping, muscle testing. There's some liver cleanses on there. I think there's some fun things that people might be interested in, and hopefully it'll help people to dive in and learn more about who they are and what they're capable of and how we can be better versions of ourselves.
Awesome. I'm loving that. And I'll make sure that I get all your information on our website, wildsoulsgathering.com, so that people can access it that way also. As we're wrapping this up, what message do you hope to leave with those seeking spiritual growth and healing?
Yeah, I think clearing the biofield and clearing trauma is such a biggie. And a matter of fact, if you go to my website, I don't know why it's doing that. If you go to my website, I'm giving a free gift to everybody who, if you go to the website, it'll be like a pop-up and you can get a free download on how to clear. Because I think the more stagnant energy that we can move and kind of clear out, the better income you're going to get. The different outcome will create a different income. And that can be finances, that can be relationships, that can be intuition and getting clarity for choices or decisions you have to make. It really covers all the bases. And so I just encourage people to really dig in and learn more about yourself and take that time for yourself to play and to do fun things and to listen and to be quiet and to get into nature. Those are my biggies.
And they are biggies, that they are. Dr. Sharnael, I want to thank you for being on the show today, sharing your wisdom, your insights. It's all been so meaningful and definitely a lot of food for thought out there. For all you listeners out there, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. Remember, embrace your wild soul. Until next time.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Wild Soul Gatherings Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. To learn more about our guests, please go to our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. We're very eager to hear from our listeners what you thought of the episode, topics you might like us to cover in the future, your thoughts on spirituality, questions you may have. Please feel free to send us an email at wildsoulsgathering@gmail.com. This is your host, Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love. Until we meet again, embrace your wild soul.